We are Krackin Canuckleheads, covering both the Seattle Kraken and the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm going to tell you right now, the Vancouver Canucks are going to win the Stanley Cup in 2025. That's right. I'll explain to you why, logically and cosmically, at the end of this presentation. Both teams have wrapped up their preseasons, both defeating the same franchise. Wednesday night at Climate Pledge Arena, it was the Seattle Kraken 6-2 over the Edmonton Oilers. Friday night at Rogers Arena, it was the Vancouver Canucks over the Edmonton Oilers 4-1. We're going to hear from both coaches, Dan Bylsma of the Kraken and Rick Tocchet of the Vancouver Canucks. In fact, let's start right there. One of the big topics this season, we've gone over it already in previous episodes, the goaltending situation with Thatcher Demko's injury or injuries. What's the status? Well, the status is the team's pretty happy with Artur Silovs and Kevin Lankinen, the player that was recently acquired by Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin. This is talk after the game. He spoke again today, but this clip is from after the game. Not after practice, after the game against Edmonton. Regarding the goaltenders and the performance, once again, another fine one from Silovs.
Yeah, I mean, you go in from last year, his playoff, his, we know him. So my comfort level, him going in training camp, I knew he was a good goalie, so I wasn't panicking about that. Obviously Denver going down for a bit, I think getting Lankinen was huge by Patrick and Jim. That's a hell of a move to get him, because I thought Lanks had a really good 2 games. So now you feel really good about the 2 goalies until Denver comes back. So it's I've really had confidence in Silovs.
Tocchet also talked about pleasant surprises. There's always 1 or 2 in the preseason and or training camp, and this time around he really zeroed in or focused in on one guy. You want to take a stab at it? I'll give you 3 seconds, and then we're going to listen to Talk tell you who that is. 3, 2, 1. It's Kiefer Sherwood.
I really like him. I actually, it's preseason, but I would have been mad at myself. I think I should have played him a little bit more. Like I might have to put him in different lines every once in a while. So I really like his game. He's great on the bench. He's a team guy. I've really enjoyed his camp and what he's brought to this team.
All right, that goaltending situation, you can refer back to a couple of our previous episodes. We talked to Dave Tomlinson about it, the Sportsnet color commentator for the Vancouver Canucks, and brought it up a couple of different times. You can look at all of these at YouTube. Simmerpuck is the channel. It's also my Twitter X handle as well. And you can find things at SeattleHockeyInsider.com related to the Kraken. And for the Canucks, it's VancouverHockeyInsider.com. You know what? Let's switch. Let's go south and check out the Kraken. They also practiced on Saturday morning. Looks like Jared McCann's going to be fine for the opener. He had a lower body injury and missed the game on Wednesday against the Edmonton Oilers. I'm showing you some video of him skating, maybe a little winded, maybe not 100%, some conditioning there, needs to feel it a little bit, but he's supposed to be okay. Ty Cartier, who also missed the game, was replaced by Ryan Winterton. He will, looks like he's ready to go as well. Of course, that's depending on what the final roster looks like. Speaking of that final roster, and speaking of going back and looking at old videos, just go back to the last one. In fact, I'll refer to it at the end of this episode. It talks about the roster issues and the salary cap crunch that the Kraken are dealing with. As for special teams for the Seattle Kraken, very inconsistent last year in their final season under Dave Haxtell, ended up at 20.7%, which used to be phenomenal. Back in the old days, you'd want to be 80%. You want a total 100. You want to be 80% on the PK and at least 20% on the power play. So you'd think 20.7 is pretty good. But nowadays, the way the league has changed and the way the goaltending has changed, the equipment's changed, the game, the process, the systems on the power play, those numbers are jacked up. So 20.7 was 17th best in the National Hockey League. And their PK was 78 something. So not fantastic. Anyway, as it relates to the power play, here is Dan Bylsma talking about, how seriously do you take the efforts in preseason when you're juggling units and you're really not getting a look at who's who and who it's going to be until maybe late in the preseason?
I think the goal at the end of the Calgary game, the beginning of the third period against Calgary on the power play was a good sign from the power play. I thought last game against Edmonton, there was a lot of good signs from the power play. Closer to having, the 5-man units we're going to see at the start of the season, and they stepped out in the third with a mindset to score a goal, and that was, a 5-man unit close to what we're going to see, and they executed and got us a goal. And last game, the puck movement, the chances were all there for the power play. Maybe not the result, but.
All right. And speaking of rosters, they have to be in for all NHL teams by 5 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, October 7th. Of course, that does not include the Buffalo Sabres and the New Jersey Devils, who already played 2 games in Prague, and the Sabres are already 0-2 on the season. New Jersey with 2 quick wins to get things started. So they'll both come home and play 80 more games this regular season. Again, speaking of rosters, when this video wraps up, you will see the little box that gives you an opportunity to click on an old video. It's going to be the one talking about the cap crunch and the roster situation for the Kraken. As for the Canucks, why are they going to win the cup? Well, Tocchet made reference to it. If Demko is not around, and you know what? I'd still be nervous. It's just a little weird. He doesn't seem totally convinced, does he? That said, Silovs and Lankinen probably going to get the job done. And with solid goaltending, the roster they have tweaked, and despite potential, I'm going to call it mobility and puck moving issues on the bottom portion of their D-core, they still got some big bodies, which is what you need in the postseason. Love what they've done up front in terms of balance and depth. I think the team gets over the hump. And part of this is a little bit cosmic, as a couple of media guys in Vancouver will tell you, and many others elsewhere will tell you, every once in a while, this doesn't happen all the time, I'll get these feelings. It could be a game. It could be a lot of different things. If I think about it, analyze it, try to write it down and say, okay, this team's going to do this team's going to, I'll lose my ass. But if it just kind of comes to me and like a burp, it's usually right. And I have the Canucks winning the Stanley Cup. It's a Prague year. Canucks aren't there, but then again, they weren't there in 2010 either in October. The Bruins were there. I was there. And I told Zdeno Chara and assistant GM Don Sweeney, you're going to win the Stanley Cup in the spring. Ding, ding, ding. Loved what they'd put together. Had a feeling about it. Well, it's a Prague year this year. I don't know if that has anything to do with the vibe. Maybe it's the Devils. Maybe they'll get over the hump. Devils, Canucks in the final. That will come down to the Devils getting goaltending. And they've, Markstrom's there now. They've got different goaltenders. It's Markstrom and Dawes and Allen. Will that be enough to cure their ills? Wouldn't that be something? Devils coming out of Prague and making the final, but this time the team that faces the Canucks in the Stanley Cup final loses. So it's logic, it's roster, and it's that thing that happens sometimes to me. Canucks 2025. That's all I can really tell you. I don't know if you want to invest in that or not. So it's always it's always dangerous. All right. You'll see the little clicks. You can subscribe on the little face picture to this channel, or you can click on the thing if you're interested in hearing about the Kraken's issues. They won't be winning the Stanley Cup this year, whether they solve those issues or not. We'll see you on the next Krackin Canuckleheads. Cheers.